Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Great guest with us today, a fellow who I admire a great deal. He doesn't know it, but he's been someone who's been an influence on my life for a long time. His name is Shelly Palmer. He's the CEO and founder of the Palmer Group, a consulting firm. He's smart. He's interesting. He's flexible. He's adjusted his career many, many times, which we'll talk about. I think that's really interesting. But before we started today, Shelly and I were chatting about how we think about life and how busy we are or aren't and the kinds of friends we have. Shelly Palmer, how are you today? Tell us what's going on in your world.
I'm doing great. Look, everybody thinks that AI was invented on November 30th, 2022, and that has been very good for me, truly.
Well, you've been writing about and talking about AI for a dozen years that I know of, and probably longer. But I think in a broader sense, you're sought out as a keynote speaker, as a coach, as a teacher. Fortune 500 companies all over the globe are reaching out to you. I can see I'm a reader of your blog on a regular basis. So it's like where's Waldo? Where's Shelly? And well, I'm in Europe today. I'm in Asia tomorrow, and I'll stop in San Francisco on the way back. I don't know how you do it, but you do it, and your audiences are enamored with you and the education and experience you bring. In the general sense, this wave of interest in AI, you said, seems to be peaking. I'm not sure it is, but in a broader sense, how should we think about how it's impacting us? Just in the last 24 hours, I had two people who I like and respect a great deal reach out to me and say, can we come and sit down and talk to you and a couple of people in your shop to help me understand how AI is going to impact my business and what I should be doing about it? Now, that's me. Your inbox must be overflowing all the time. When you and I reconvene over a good bottle of wine on the east side of Manhattan 2 years from now, what will we say has happened since we first spoke on the podcast?
I think agency and the way to think about that word, you'll hear this a lot now. People talk about agentic models or platforms or models that bring agency. Apple just introduced iOS 18 and 18.1 beta is out with their new iPhone 16 line. And if you've got anything later than an iPhone 15, it will be functional on your device. And what this does is something we haven't seen before. It gives Siri, a voice assistant that has always been very substandard, agency. And what do I mean by that? You can say to Siri, take this picture, enhance it, and text it to Jim. While you could set up a shortcut always for that, or you could do the three things yourself. Siri's never been able to cross apps, cross functionality, and on one voice command, do all three things. And so you've given Siri agency within your phone. And this is courtesy of artificial intelligence or AI, machine learning. So, right, in your iPhone is your PII, your personal identifiable information, your PHI, which is your health information. It knows how often I breathe, and it knows how often my heart beats, and it knows my weight, and it knows my activity.
And your sleep?
My sleep for sure. And it also has my credit cards because I have Apple Pay. So imagine Siri with agency watching me order flowers from 1-800-Flowers for my wife, Debbie, on special occasions, Mother's Day, birthday, this, that, the next thing. And for my the women in my life who I always want to acknowledge on certain days of the year, or sometimes just because. Well, Siri right now would need, or not Siri, the iPhone, a calendar. I would need to tell my calendar, hey, it's a week before Debbie's birthday. Ding, 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 order flowers for the day or the day before or whatever. And that's, by the way, I have calendar reminders in my calendar everywhere for things I need to do like that. Granddaughter's birthdays, kids' birthday, like all that stuff. Imagine the AI in the phone understanding this behavior, knowing my preference is 1-800-Flowers over any other, florist I might use, and doing all of it without being told, letting me know, hey, say yes. If it's time to order flowers for your daughter-in-law, press a button here to say yes. These are the 3 bouquets I've chosen for you because they are similar to the ones you've chosen before. That level of convenience sounds interesting. Some people will allow their AI to do this and some people won't. every marketer on this planet is going to be impacted by this. Imagine Apple making deals directly with the hotel chains, directly with the airlines, so that there's no aggregation sites anymore. Now, all of a sudden, your device is out there acting as a procurement department for you. You've given it agency to do so. So this change is like Jim, this is the week that it's happening, right? These phones are just deploying this week. iOS 18 still, 0.1 is still in beta. It won't generally be released for another month or so. So we're at the very cusp of this massive behavioral change that no one understands. I don't either. I know what's going to happen, but I don't know what the impact will be. The first day I ordered something from Amazon, which is like probably the first few months it was in business, you could see that this was the right way to do it. And if you were optimistic, you'd say, "Oh, this is going to be the way you order book. Like we're going to do this. It's every book." Like you would think that it took these guys 20 plus years to be profitable. But for the pandemic, you still wouldn't be a pure e-commerce shopper. In the Palmer household, we were probably at 60-65% e-commerce pre-COVID. We're at 90+% now of the things we buy. And everyone I know is sort of hit that e-commerce platform. Everybody who's going to be good in e-commerce is good in e-commerce now. And preferences have been done and subscriptions have been started. So look at that massive behavior change. But instead of it taking, 5 years, it took 20 plus years to get done. Will agency in your devices, will agency across the business, every business unit, because this will happen in supply chain, this will happen in marketing, this will happen any place with procurement, any place where things have to get moved down a workflow or a process. Will this take 5 years? Will it take 20 years? I don't know. My guess is this is so compressed in its capability set that what took 20 years at the early part of this century is probably going to take 10 or 5 years now, because this is just, I've never seen anything come this fast in my career.
It drives me crazy currently in the media. You hear people say, well, then there was the .com bust, and when is this one going to bust? I'm a novice here, but I think this is the thing that's going to cause the biggest change in my life ever. And I've had a long life.
It will, and it will because it touches on the most fundamental human process, which is communication. We have transitioned from the age of curation to the age of generation. My whole life, prior to November 30th, 2022, which I call the CG boundary, the curation generation boundary, which is the day that ChatGPT became a public product that anyone could get to. The technology had been around for a couple of years, but they released into the wild an incredibly successful chat client called ChatGPT, which everyone knows. Prior to that date, anything you found on the public web, there was a 99+% chance that it was created by a human being only. There were some things created by a machine. There a company called Narrative Sciences would take like financial documents and make them financial reporting in on a news site, or the weather could be done by machine, but mostly everything you found anywhere was done by a person. Post November 30th, 2022, we are in the generative era. And considering, if you think about autocomplete on your iPhone, right, you're typing and it's like, I'm in a cab and it says can, and damn you autocorrect. You didn't mean it to say can. It said, so this is really just a very sophisticated version of autocomplete. Like that's what a large language model does.
If you are so good at defining things and coining phrases, it's the autocomplete on steroids.
It is. But I mean, that is precisely and exactly from a technology perspective what it's doing. It's calculating the next best token, or in a layperson's language, the next best word. And so, or next best part of an image, or next best piece of sound in the multimodal models. So here, we're in a place now where instead of creating, describing, you must describe and store. You can't just store something. Imagine an iPhone with 1,000 songs on it, but no metadata, the data that describes the data. Well, you have 1,000 songs, you don't know what they are. You have to have the name of the artist, the name of the song. That's the metadata, which describes it. And someone has to create that metadata. It doesn't happen by itself. So you after you create the song, you need to properly describe it to store it. And that's the age of curation, where a musicologist or a producer or somebody is going to say, this is a reggae song, this is a rap song, this is the kind of orchestration and instrumentation. It needs to be described when it's stored, or you can't surface it ever again. So in the age of curation, we create, we label, we annotate, and then we store. And the goal is that at the right time for the right person in the right place, we're going to find it, and we're going to bring it to you. And by the way, you do this on your e-commerce site, right? You take a picture of a beautiful bouquet that someone has spent time and energy building, and you name it, and you label it, and you tag it a lot of different ways. And when someone says Mother's Day, this is an appropriate bouquet for Mother's Day. It's an appropriate bouquet for a birthday. It's got red flowers in it, so there's some red about it. You will have spent a lot of time trying to describe the metadata properly, so that when someone searches on 1-800flowers.com, they'll be able to find the bouquet they're looking for. So that's the age of curation. Now imagine something different. Imagine that with all the same data, I'm searching for the appropriate bouquet, and the AI knows what flowers you guys have access to today and in inventory, which ones are about to spoil, which ones need to be like all the things about the supply chain. And instead of you going and grabbing a picture somebody took that spent a lot of time lighting it properly and creating this amazing image of this bouquet that you're going to try to incentivize people to buy, AI generates a bouquet in the style of a 1-800-Flowers bouquet.
Based on the inventory it knows we have and fresh.
Right now, that's fresh, and prices it elastically to move to this client who we know their propensity. We understand their propensity to buy, and we know what's going to incentivize them to buy. So that's the age of generation that we're in now. And when you think about the cost center of, first, a stylist is going to make like 7 of these in a photographer's studio. They're going to get a seamless together. They're going to like light it perfectly. They're going to spend the whole day getting this thing ready. And I'm not telling you something you don't know, but your audience may not know that this is like an art form. Taking beautiful pictures of bouquets is you need to be really skilled to do this. And now the flower merchant who's in charge of supply chain can say, this is without any muss or fuss.
No, change the background. No, eliminate that one flower, and it's done.
In fact, you wouldn't even say it. It would know from supply chain. You know what? We're out of azaleas. It can't be in the bouquet.
We can tell you're not a florist, and that's a good thing.
Whatever. I'm making up. I know 3 flower names from my wife: azalea, rose. 4: orchid and tulip. And I know which ones I'm not allowed to buy ever.
But we should know.
Well, the thing is, I've been negatively trained, right? Because I have made the mistake. It's not that I was positively trained. Hi, honey, I brought you flowers. Oh my God, really? Where'd you get those? So this is, I've learned over the years, like there's a way you buy flowers from Mrs. Palmer, but that's not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is that in every way that you get ready to sell something, in every way that you interface using data to create the right content for the right person at the right place at the right time, that's all changed, all of it. So 2 years from now, to go to your question in the longest possible way, what's going to be different is that we'll have agentic tools as much as we'll let them be agentic. And it's not clear to me that everyone's going to give over their data and say willingly, hey, here's everything about me.
It's like everything else. It's going to happen generationally.
Right. Yeah, I think so. But the ability to do this will so empower the people who use it that we're going to have 2 classes of people who are masters of the tool set. And you can think of it with a one simple word. Everybody who's scared, or pulling the covers over their head, as you suggested metaphorically, should think of this as super automation. End of story. No jargon, no nonsense. And what I mean by super automation is you wish that this thing that you do on a regular basis would happen automatically. Like whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is. It could be something as simple as making sure there's milk in the refrigerator in the morning. It could be, did I make the coffee last night? Like whatever it is, how would you super automate? Meaning, oh boy, that could never be done in the world I live in. But now science fiction is real. So you could automate this. I wish that something would go through my inbox and weed out all the things that I can just do with 2-word answers and know that they were the right 2-word answers. I wouldn't have to deal with that nonsense. I wish somebody would blank in my word processing or whatever. And if you can think about super automating it, there is a very good chance that within 24 months, somebody, and we're talking one of the Magnificent Seven, right? Microsoft or Meta, they're going to bring this as a product. It's not going to be some obscure like Kids in the Garage, because you need grown-up tools to do this.
That's okay. So that's an important point you're making, Shelly. Worth Media Group, the Techonomy Group, had a climate event in the city this week because of UN Climate Week, and several people in sidebar conversations were having just this discussion. And my point as a layman was, look, I know we cannot go toe to toe with the big seven you talked about. I said, you have to pick your partners here. It seems to me that Apple played it really cleverly in terms of everyone's saying they're behind in AI. And they said, guys like Jim are overwhelmed by having to want to adopt this, figure out where it's going to go, how it's going to impact my personal life, my business life, the customers, my community, trying to figure all that out. And what I've decided is we can't figure that out on our own. We got to pick the partners who we're going to work with, because the power is going to be in the agency creation, as you describe it, and they're going to give me the tools. So Microsoft seems to be making a bet that, look, you're going to need tools. We'll help you to understand this, but we're going to sell you the picks and shovels. And it's called Copilot. And if you subscribe to us, we'll be out there figuring it out for you and give you the tools to do it. Apple said it's not AI, it's Apple intelligence. Calm down, everybody. We're going to figure this out for you. We're going to make it like everything else we do. User interface is going to be critical, and we'll figure this out for you. Is it important that we pick a partner?
I think we're not going to have choices, because these very large tech companies are woven into the fabric of our lives in ways that we don't even recognize or realize. You've been logged into Google for 20 years. Everybody, 24 hours a day, has been logged into Google for 20 years.
And it's learning.
It's been learning every day. Now, while generative AI tools don't learn, when they are stacked together with other kinds of AI, the TikTok news feed, the Facebook news feed, the Amazon recommendation engine, the Netflix recommendation engine, Google itself, these tools learn from your behaviors, where the language model can't learn because it's pre-trained. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. The other neural networks can and do learn. So when you stack them together, which is what gives the large language models agency, by putting them together with other kinds of AI, you do get, quote, Apple intelligence, a holistic system that accomplishes goals for you as opposed to individual tasks. If you're in business, you want to think about business outcomes always and only. There are two things that are happening now, and it's a leadership problem from a business perspective. You've just taught somebody to do 3 hours worth of work in 3.5 minutes. At minute 4, they're not going to move on to their next task unless they're properly led, compensated, remunerated, or otherwise incentivized to move on to the next project. They're going to go out for coffee. The deep state hates this. I call them the middle management mafia, but you call them whatever you want. These are people who are now being taught to do 2 years worth of work inside of 1 year. And without paying them for the extra year's worth of output, they're going to be very reluctant to give the enterprise that much additional value.
Your counsel has been, and I've heard you say this, and I've seen you write this, is if you're, as an employee or a middle management mafia, if you're not figuring out how to do your job or the parts of your job that you can with artificial intelligence, be assured someone above you is trying to figure that out today. And if you're not finding a way to migrate to the work that AI can't do to create value and add value to your enterprise, you're going to be looking for something else to do.
No question about it. And what's interesting to me is that where the leaders are lagging right now in a way they shouldn't be, there's no point in teaching productivity to the rank and file worker. And they're going to learn on their own, because those who are ambitious and want to stay employed, like, you're in your 20s and 30s, you got a couple decades left of productive work. And to be fair, if you have a family where you're putting kids through college or whatever you're going to do, or your mortgages to pay or car payments, you're going to need the work. I mean, most people are not independently wealthy. So you have to stay in the workforce. You're going to need to be good at this. But here's the thing, where the leaders, I think, are making mistakes, Jim. You need to innovate workflow and process with the same intensity and at the same pace that the tech is being innovated. And like I said, I've never seen anything come this fast. So, it's really hard when someone's used to doing like a Gantt chart or a waterfall schedule to do a project, and the project has a beginning, middle, and ending, and there's meetings, and there's a way people have been doing stuff for years. And all of a sudden, you can build a couple of variables into a pre-prompt, press a button and 75% of that work is done. There's still the 25% of work that humans do, but 75% of the executional work is done. Most leaders don't have a way to deal with that. And what I found fascinating as over the last couple of years, as we've been teaching prompt crafting and prompt engineering and workflow and process innovation, what I find so fascinating is that the unwillingness, the inability of leadership to completely go into the CFO's office and say, you know what, we are training our workforce in a new way. We have got to build a new workflow and process. And now that we're doing this, we have to rethink how we compensate. Some people want to go home and put their kids to bed and have dinner with their spouse or significant other and hang out. Others want to work like animals till midnight. It never mattered in the old days because people just did what they did. But now you get someone who wants to work like an animal and they're getting a 500% productivity boost from these tools. And you get somebody who wants to get home at 4:30 so that they can put the kids to bed and do dinner and all that. They're also getting 500% productivity increases out of the tools, but they've got a different life goal. You as a leader have to figure out now, because of these immense differences in productivity and time management, how are you going to manage your organization that way? And you throw return to office on top of that, Jim, it's a hot mess.
Wow, it sure is. We have a young man who's part of our team here, recently joined within the year. We've worked with his company. It's called Cardile, and they're trying to reinvent the greeting card industry, and I think they are and will. Their CEO is a young man named Adam Donato. Adam is a PhD in computer science and a terrific guy. His two partners, David and Stefan, terrific as well. But specifically, Adam was telling us in a conversation a few weeks ago that David, his partner, was pressing this AI embrace for the last 3 years. And he said, and I said, yeah, it's interesting, but he says, it's only because of when we joined the 1-800-Flowers group. He says, it's been the last 10 weeks that I've really been dunking my head in this. And he said, I'm here to testify that it's changed my life and my productivity. He says, I'm now 80% more productive than I was 10 weeks ago. And he says, and I've not spent a lot of time on this. He said, I think I'm the best coder in the world. He says, I now realize it doesn't matter. He said, I started feeding some code questions I had. It started producing code for me. I ran it against other programs to check the code. This is code that would have taken me 3 days to write, and I have it back in seconds. And he said, I had a real bug in this communication, in this software platform communicating that one, the AI platform, figured it out for him when he'd been working on it for a month. And he said, I had 2 very talented engineers on it, and it figured it out for him in no time at all. He says, I'm here to testify. This is an internal team meeting. He says, it's dramatically changed my productivity. So he put that back to our tech team and said, you have a lot of engineers on your tech team. Their lives should be changing too. And they're not. But I'll tell you, they are now. But that's a living example, as I hear you, about what we're experiencing and how it's changing productivity. So I really hadn't even thought about the consequences from return to work, differences in personalities, lifestyle, stage of life, and the compensation questions.
It's truly a leadership issue. The tech has been coming fast and furious for the last 250,000 years. It just has been on an exponential curve. And so for the first 250,000 years, it didn't feel very fast. But now it's...
Well, we thought it did.
Yeah.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah, that's the whole point. And so at the end of the day, your coder example is perfect in that I write a lot of code on the weekends, and between football games on Sunday, I will forget. And the things I hate commenting code, I hate writing tests, and I hate writing documentation. So of course it's next Sunday, football's on, put on Red Zone. I'm sitting with my laptop in the living room. I was like, oh, what was this function I wrote last week? You simply ask the platform, what does this module do? What does this function do? And it will tell you immediately. Could you just write the comments for this code? Comment this code, please. Write the docs, write the tests, and it's done. And so it takes me, a mediocre coder who does it on the weekends just to stay in it. This is not hyperbole. I'm probably 50 to 60 times more productive as an engineer than I would be as a amateur weekend warrior.
50 times?
50 times. And what I mean by 50 times, measurable 50 times, something that I would use to code. There's a website called Stack Overflow that has a lot of like examples on it. And then there's GitHub, and then there's good old fashioned Google. And when you have a problem, you would go to Stack Overflow to see if anybody has done this problem before. Go to GitHub to see if anybody's just written this thing you're trying to write so you could steal it and tweak it, right? And then you'd ask Dr. Google. It's like, here's the error message. I don't know what this is. Like, what's going on? And so you'd be doing that and watching football and not paying attention to pretty much any of it. Now I write something that doesn't work. It's like, hey, help me do this. And like you're co-writing with the code. And so rather than me taking 3 months to finish something on the weekend because I'm goofing around with it, we're talking about literally before one regulation football game is over, I have commented, completely tested, documented, finished code. That's what I mean by 50 times more productive. Like something that would have taken me 3-4 months to get to like a hobbyist is fully finished and, in a 3-hour time period. And this is a very, very big deal. Now, imagine these tools, as you've described, in the hands of a competent professional 12-hour day engineer. Some of them is diminishing returns. Some of these people are really fast and they can do stuff. But there's the next level. Remember, I said, think of this as super automation. There's a product at a company called Vercel, Vercel, called V0. Version 0. What does V0 do? You describe the website you want. It gives you 4 websites that it builds for you based on your description, but it's not like a Squarespace or a Wix or something where it's a website. It's the code for the website.
Wow.
Which means if you're a competent coder, you now wire it up and you're finished. It is the most insane program. And like when you look at something like V0, you see the future, the immediate future. And who's using it the most? You'd think, oh, well, people who don't know how to do. No, all the coders in Hyderabad who are, hired to do websites, who use their own templates and have their own very quick way of getting something spun up. The better engineer you are, the more value you get out of it. And I think that's the most important thing for everybody to take away.
That is such an important frame of mind.
Yeah, I mean, literally, subject matter expertise. Human beings are magic. And everybody's conflating two things that they shouldn't conflate. People, I don't know why, Jim, but in our society, somehow, somewhere, we stopped teaching music in school. We stopped teaching art appreciation and art history in school. We stopped teaching the arts and letters, and we went pretty hard into tech and science, and we went really headlong into sports. And through that, we now conflate technical excellence and creativity. Like if you have a helicopter mom who's teaching a kid who wants their kid to play saxophone and makes them play scales and arpeggios every single day, like 12 hours a day till they get great at it. So here you have a technician that can play lots of notes really fast, but is it music? It's immense technique. It's technique that is dwarfing others, but art cannot be ignored. You look at a Picasso with six charcoal marks on a page and it stops you for a half hour. You're looking at it going, wow. And then you see someone who's done this amazing photorealistic painting and it's like, but it's not really well composed. It's technically amazing, but it's like, okay, that should have been a photograph and it wouldn't even been a good photograph. But wow, someone painted that? What immense technique. And now in our world, that technique gets conflated with creativity. And so if you think about the average job someone's doing, it's like, well, AI is going to put me out of work. It's like, hold on a minute. If you do human stuff, like human creativity, if you use the magic of humanity and subject matter expertise and the amazing pattern matching brain that a human brain is to think for a living, it can't touch you because it's a pattern matching tool. And while this emergent quality of reason is being explored, and while it can reason through certain kinds of problems, what it really does is amplify execution. But if you conflate in your mind creativity and execution, then you think it's coming for you. And it may be coming for you if most of your job is executional. Or you can understand that you need to separate out what makes you human and what you do that is exclusively a human function, and then amplify your executional skills with these tools. And if you are willing to amplify and learn to amplify and have literally the acumen to understand the difference between what a human needs to do and what executional excellence looks like, then you really have a leg up. And everybody who conflates the posers, and I hate to say this in a pejorative way, but people who think that because you can type 125 words a minute, you can write a novel. Anyone who believes that is in serious trouble right now because you're not going to beat a computer at adding up a column of numbers. You aren't. You aren't going to beat it. If your job is to take a number in a box in Excel, move it to another cell in Excel, and then write a narrative about how that number got from there to there, your job is over. That was never a job. And it's really not a job now.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann.
And I'm George Everly Jr.
During the COVID-19 epidemic, I stumbled upon an article that Dr. George wrote, which had a real strong impact on me in terms of how COVID was and was likely to impact our social connections, our relationships. And it really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to George, basically wrote him a fan letter, and that began our relationship.
We found a mutual interest in helping people become their best selves, especially in times of adversity.
Together, we embarked on a quest to co-write Lodestar. That journey began with countless hours of researching the most impactful self-help books out there.
Once we had our picks, we combined the science with the practical.
The result of our journey, the creation of a one-stop shop for the best of the best in self-help.
We decided to write this book to help others go from where they are to where they want to be and be the best possible selves they could be.
So if you're looking to boost your career, build stronger relationships, or simply become the best version of yourself, Lodestar is here to guide you on your path.
Let's unpack who this crazy guy Shelly Palmer is. You mentioned music and the entertainment industry. I don't know if everyone knows, but your path here has been a interesting one. I know you went to NYU, and I know you studied to be a director and a producer, so you had a penchant for the entertainment industry, and you have this parental music influence, which caused you to be a musician and love musicians. What neighborhood did you grow up in?
Oh my God. So I am a Long Island suburbs kid. I grew up in Huntington, South Huntington. I think they call it Melville now. They might have changed it to Melville when I was a kid. So I grew up in this little part of South Huntington. It was a really normal neighborhood that some builder built. Most of the houses are very similar to one another. I went to public school, Walt Whitman High School, and then off to NYU. And it was just, they had a really nice music program. I think I was very lucky to be in a really remarkable class of musicians and artists. I don't know why it happened that way, but in our jazz band, in our high school jazz band, more than half of them became professional musicians and the other half became music educators. It's like everybody went in the music business and the 21 piece big band, and everybody ended up in the music business. It was a very talented group of kids.
Must have been an amazing faculty too.
Insane. This guy, Wilfred Sievers, was the band director, and another guy, Tom Gordon, was the orchestra director. These two gentlemen had such a massive impact in my life. My father and mother owned music stores, and they were music educators. They met at Juilliard, and they owned music stores, and they started their career working in the New York City school system as music teachers, and then ultimately opened up a chain of music stores. And
what was the chain called?
It's called Freeport Music, and they had mail order and warehouses and import export. My dad did a good job building it into something. But his first love was music, and he was my first music teacher. And I kind of am the member of a lucky DNA club. I had a lot of musical skill that sort of came with the package that I didn't understand when you were a kid. Because the house is very musical. Everybody's playing all the time. It was every night. There was a jam session in my living room every night. Mom or dad or everybody.
Siblings?
I have one brother, a younger brother, who played a little bit of bass and some woodwinds. I pretty much play anything that we could find in the music store. And my father had made sure that everything in the music store was in the house too. And he'd come home from work and we'd play for 2 hours. I mean, that was the thing. We'd have dinner and then we'd play. So it was, that was sort of my upbringing. And I started to write music at a very early age. And that's what I did first. I started writing music for TV, while I was still in college, jingles and television shows and stuff.
And you have some famous jingles in your repertoire.
Yes, I do. And I don't talk about it very much, but if anyone's interested, you can go to shellypalmer.com and go to the footer. And there's a little thing that says original music, and it'll speak for itself.
Still getting residuals?
Yes, sir. I God bless ASCAP. May they live forever. That is a very big part of my life. I won ASCAP's 12th and 13th annual Film and TV Awards for most performed themes on television. It's not a quality award. It's a quantity award. I was a pretty prolific writer.
That's amazing.
pretty prolific writer. Still am. I write every day, and it's a thing I like to do, and I play every day. And I don't write. I don't take jobs anymore. If I would take a job, Jim, I'd write the music for my 5,000th or around my 5,000th television commercial this year. I mean, I wrote an awful lot of music and an awful lot of TV themes, and a lot of news themes for news programming.
And then you ran the association.
Yeah, I actually was an elected president of the Emmys, of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. So look, cut me in half, count the rings, man. I've been in business a long time. And it's just, you go through some stages. I did my whole pro bono thing with the Emmy Awards and did that for 35 years, and I was tech chair for a while,
and then along the way you were tinkering and you invented this, hey, we can do multiple screens here. And maybe I should get this thing called a patent.
Yeah. So what happened was a little funny. I was very young, and when something happens that's going to change your life, you don't recognize it when it's happening. And that's happened to me many times. But this particular moment in time, I knew was a life-changing moment.
While it was happening.
There's no question in my mind what was going on. 1970, I am introduced to a full-up Moog synthesizer, analog synthesizer. And I mean, I'm 12 years old. Due to my own family connections, I'm in a room with the state-of-the-art in analog synthesis, which is a nascent industry. No one knows what this stuff is. And very few people are into it. It's mostly academic and in nature. My dad owns music stores. The thing I was looking at was over $8,000 in 1970. For context, the car we drove was $6,500 in 1970. The house was $38,000 that I lived in. It's not like, to understand, like a Les Paul Custom was $129. Like no one had a musical instrument for $8,000. It was like no such thing. Pianos were $4,000. Like nothing cost $8,000.
And everyone says, well, this isn't going to catch on because they're too expensive.
Too expensive. And I am looking at this thing, mind exploded.
But 12 years old, you knew it was going to have an enormous impact.
Well, here's the thing, and I don't know how to replicate this ever anywhere for anybody. So this feeling, it was overwhelming. Grew up understanding what symphonic musical instruments were, right? Every instrument in the orchestra. And to my parents, pop music was like Broadway, like Oklahoma was pop music, and the Beatles, which I was really into, and the Stones, and like all the local, the most popular groups were the devil's music to my parents. Like they didn't think that was music; they thought that was noise. But I had been, brought up on acoustic musical instruments that you learn to play, and you spend quality time and energy learning to play. And all of a sudden, there's a completely new color palette, as if someone invented an entirely new way to interpret sound and hear sounds you'd never heard before, and an unlimited palette to create them on. And it was so overwhelming to me that it changed everything I thought about in the universe that day. And I immediately got into it, forced my father to buy me two giant modules, a Moog System 2C, I believe is the original one I had. And it cost a fortune. It really did. I had to take a loan to get it, but I was like their little child prodigy musician, and they wanted me to have what I wanted to have. And I learned to computer control it. By the time I was about 17 years old, the Motorola 6502 processor came out. I'm walking through Radio Shack. I'm like, I wonder if, and I just bought like $50 worth of parts, and I took it back to my dad's music store, to the guitar and amplifier repair guy, Walter. And I said, and I brought the two giant cases of analog modules down from the house. I said, we're going to computer control this. He goes, what the hell does that mean? I said, I have no idea, but I bought a couple of books. Let's go. And it took us weeks and weeks, and we were goofing around with it. And we finally figured out how to like be able to store.
This was in the music store?
Yeah, we're in the back of the music store. I'm sitting there, I'm going after school every day, and Walter and I are sitting there, and God knows how many people's amplifiers and guitars were sitting there waiting to get repaired that Walter and I were too busy doing our own thing with. Us crazy. I'm this little 17-year-old kid trying to figure out. And so when my friends at some of the synthesizer companies saw what I was doing, it was suggested by some very, very, I'm not going to drop any names, by some very household name people that I write my first patent, and I didn't know how to do that. So I'm 17, 18 years old, and somebody really schooled in the art sits down next to me and says, this needs to be patented. And that was the start of me understanding that if you had an idea, you could protect it, with a copyright and a patent. And so I knew about music copyrights, obviously, but I didn't understand the PTO, until the Patent and Trademark Office, until I was about 17, 18 years old. And yeah, then, I mean, there's a ton of these behind me, but there's like, I went a little crazy, Jim. It was like, whenever I thought something up, it's like, well, I wonder if this is unique. And sometimes they were, and sometimes they weren't. Like, sometimes it was an obvious idea that was apparently obvious to others. But I have the earliest interactive TV patents in the space. I have some of the earliest. One of my patents is called teaches a protocol that ultimately got named OCAP, the Open Cable Application Protocol, and it basically turns cable television systems into client-server networks. No one knew what that meant back then, but in 1993, I had a really decent
They know
idea.
now.
Yeah, they really do. So it's like, so these kinds of ideas, I had a lot of people who helped me, and had a lot of people who were way older than me with a lot more experience who were incredibly kind to me. Like when I was a kid and growing up, I've always sought out the wisdom of people who others would say are irrelevant or not. In fact, I'm losing so many of them now because all of them are 20, 30 years my senior.
You tell a wonderful, warm story about sitting on an airplane, your first trip, I think, to California, sitting next to Ed Breyer.
Ed Blyer, he just passed a few months ago. I get a little misty thinking about it. It's a guy, I'm literally in college, and I sit in first class because I was told by one of my TV teachers, like, if you're going to LA, you have to take American Flight 1 and sit in first class. It's so long ago that mattered. Like, there was no such thing as loyalty programs and upgrades. You had to pony up your money. And he was right, because I was sitting next to Ed Blyer, who was the head of Warner Brothers, and he's reading all these trade magazines like, Billboard and Variety and Hollywood Reporter, whatever the major trades were back then. And he saw me eyeing them, and he goes, would you like to borrow one? And I'm like, yeah, like, because I'm such a hot stuff guy, as a senior at NYU Film School. And
I want to see if I'm mentioned.
So he looks over at me after I'm pouring through this thing, and he goes, are you in the business? I just looked at him smiling, not yet. Why are you going to LA? And I told him I was on my way to a meeting to do a pitch, and it was the beginning of a 50-year friendship. I'm an unbelievable guy.
Because you were open to it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I want to tell you, up until the day he died, well, 2 weeks before, I would talk to Ed once a month. We'd have lunch every 2-3 months. And when something weird happened, he would write me a note, because he gets my email like you do every day. He'd write, hey, Shelly, this is nonsense. Or, hey, Shelly, this is pretty smart, but you know what you didn't think of? And God damn it, he was usually right.
No kidding.
You can't buy that kind of mentorship. You need to be open to it. And I think you have to earn it for yourself. I think you have to go and honestly put the time in on both sides. But this is something that I learned really early. Like, people have been on the road you're on, maybe not the exact path you're taking, but they've been generally on the road. And you're doing a business deal. There are guys who know business deals better than you do. To this day, there are people who know it better than me. There's always somebody better, but getting solid advice from people you respect, and being lucky enough, and I'm going to say lucky enough or fortunate enough to have had people who are willing to share their knowledge and wisdom
and invest in that relationship with you.
That's why I teach at Newhouse. It's like, I was taught early that you pay that back, because it's a kind of a two-way street. So I've tried to live up to Marvin Traub. And
Shelly, forecast one more thing for us, if you would. I'd love to hear from you. You office right across the street from NYU Langone. I'm on the board there with some wonderful people who do unbelievable work. There's a guy named Andrew there who's focusing their future and looking at how they should position things. And Ken Langone is going to retire next year after leading this place from nowhere to the top teaching health system in the world. Bob Grossman, the Dr. Bob Grossman, the dean and the CEO of the hospital, is going to retire. They've been partnered for 17 or 18 years, those two amazing men. So I'd love to ask you about how it's going to change healthcare, how it's going to change education. You gave us a little hint there, certainly the entertainment industry. How's it going to change the Palmer Group?
I can give you a very up-close personal example that you will deeply understand. I write a newsletter every day. So I've been doing this since 1996, April of 96, 6 days a week.
Saturdays, it's best of.
Right. But Sundays is the thought leadership piece, which gets written on Saturday. So Monday to Friday, I'm at my desk at 6:30 in the morning, cup of coffee in hand, and I am reading and writing. It's an hour. This is prior to the advent of the AI tools we're using now, which are roughly 3 years old. They predate ChatGPT by about a year. Now, the news tool that puts the emails out in the world has been neural network based for 13 years. And it has evolved over time. And it learns and it knows who everybody is. And we have over 680,000 people on our daily email list. So it started with 40 people, and now it's up to 680. It's free. Anyone can get it. It's not, there's no charge. But the thing,
If you're not reading it, you're falling behind.
thank you.
No, I completely agree. In prepping for this today, which was joyous for me, team of people I work with in production, Joy Shim said to me, she found out that we both read your blog every day. And she was like bubbly about working on this project. She prepared me so much material for our conversation. I'm so frustrated that we didn't get to a fraction of it. So let's get back to the Palmer Group.
So 5 days a week prior to 3 years ago was an hour weekdays. That's 5 hours. And then on the weekends, it's about 3 hours on Saturday, same 6:30 in the morning, but I would do a longer piece. The daily pieces are 300 to 500 words, and the weekend pieces are 800 to 1,300 words, but they're far more researched and they're far more thought through, and they take more time. And I also love to go down rabbit holes and read. Like I'll start reading one thing, and then somehow I'm now in the middle of I'm trying to look something up, and all of a sudden I'm reading about, how certain trees are being used in woodworking. It's like, wait a minute. Okay, let me get back. So anyway, that was another 3 hours. That's 8 hours a week. With the advent of DaVinci 3, which is the precursor to GPT 3.5, I started to incorporate generative AI into my daily practice. Today, using the tools that we have built on OpenAI's APIs and on Anthropic's APIs for Claude, a different large language model, and on Meta's APIs for Llama, so we've got 3 models I like for writing. I now spend somewhere between, I'm going to call it 15 and 18 minutes during the week on a weekday. So I'm saving about 40 minutes a day. And on the weekends, I'm down to under an hour always, sometimes as low as 45 minutes to get out 1,300 words. Now I've always written quickly, but I've always spent a lot of time researching and doing all kinds of other things. So the productivity enhancement is its ability to get out to the web, get me the information I need. It still has to go to a proofreader. It still needs to go to our fact checker. It still needs to do all the things it needs to do. And they use tools that have sped up their world. I am doing 14 months worth of work now in 12 months on one task. I get 2 full months back of productive time. My pay grade, Jim, that's real money. So how's it changed the Palmer Group? When I look at all of the various functions throughout the organization and everybody's picked up 2 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 15 minutes there, 10 minutes there on a task, you take their annual salary and you literally lop off what that is. And they can either do more work if you properly compensate them. And we do, because I understand the leadership issue here. So everybody here is doing more. They're getting more money they're getting more remuneration and compensation in the way they want it. And they're also doing, in some cases, I've got people that are doing the work of 3 and 4 people. One person is doing the work of 3 or 4 people. So it has changed the fundamental economics. If you believe that productivity is the key driver of economic success, there are many ways to define success. But if we're talking straight up economic success, I can't set the price of my goods and services. The market sets those prices. I could be the high cost provider, the low cost provider, but generally market sets the price. But I have control over what it costs me to create those goods and services. So the Palmer Group is completely different. We are probably, we've grown because the topic is hot that we're very skilled in and schooled
But
in.
everyone also needs you, Shelly, to understand the issue. I know you're the most in-demand keynote speaker in the world. I know that. And I know you're terrific. And people are still coming, you do some of them, but you can't do a fraction of the requests you get. You must be doing these engagements because you like the group, you want to go to that location. So you have a filter of reasons why you consider accepting one of those many invitations.
Yes is the short answer, but mostly I'm a musician, which means whoever gets in the queue first wins. Like if there's an open thing in the schedule, I would never turn somebody down when something better comes along, and something better comes along every day. But my dad, may he rest in peace, taught me pretty straight up, when you accept the job to go play on a Pepsi demo, you do not blow that off of the Burger King final. You literally play the demo and you dance with the one who brung you. So that's what we do here at the Palmer Group. It's a musician's pirate code, if you will. It's like
okay. The last question for this session is, all the people out there who've just heard you, who listened to you, let's say they didn't know you, they were under a rock someplace and they didn't know who Shelly Palmer was. Now they've heard you and they say, how do I do that in my business? Where do they go, Shelly?
So ShellyPalmer.com. But I am not the keeper of the secret book of AI, and I am.
No, you are.
I'm not.
You're the artificial intelligence of understanding artificial intelligence. Does Janet Tringali at EY say, Shelly, how can you help us to equip our people to help all the companies that are banging on our door saying, help us do this?
We do get a lot of those requests, but my point is the following. You can certainly hire us or your favorite consultant, but I am not the keeper of this secret knowledge. This is knowledge that's available to anybody. What you need to do is inject yourself in the process. And the way I would suggest that everybody do it, right now, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, is ChatGPT for Teams. That has nothing to do with Microsoft Teams. It's the paid version of ChatGPT from OpenAI. I don't work for them. I don't get any commission off of this. Go get it for yourself or your team members as well. What you should do is pick a passion project, something you deeply personally care about, where like a side hustle. It could be something as simple as like hooking up the PTA with stuff, or your cooking baking business, or anything you deeply care about, so that you're not doing a tutorial like my course, Generative AI for Execs. You're literally learning this for a purpose, and the purpose is something you deeply care about. And then just start doing it until you do it right. Because the only way to get good at this is to do it. And in order to do it, you can't take a course. You can't read a book. You don't just read a blog post. You start a project and you dive into it. And there is literally nobody standing in your way. There's 1 billion YouTube videos, 1 million blog posts, 10 billion little tutorials and snippets, and the tools itself will teach you to use the tools. If you don't know how to ask ChatGPT something, you say, how can I ask you this question? Like, help me ask you and it will tell you. There's no secrets. And so while people look at me like I'm some oracle of AI, yes, thank you, everybody, but no one's standing in your way. So if you're listening and you want to be good at this, then just go be good at it. There's no magic. Like, if you can read English, you can be great at this. It's that simple.
Shelly, you're so wise, and now our little audience knows that not only are you so smart and entertaining and thoughtful and multidisciplined, but you're really a nice guy too, and that's quite a potent package. So thank you for spending time with us today, Shelly, sharing your wisdom, your passion. I hope you don't put a cap on the number of us who can subscribe to your blog every day.
Not at all. All the best, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thanks, pal.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com. Find the perfect gift.
And wow the people you love.
Wow. This is amazing. Whether you want to say happy birthday. So cute.
Or I love you.
I love you too. Thinking of you.
Wow.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com. Celebrate the people you love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.